Good morning. I'm Suzanne, a horticulturist here at Rogers Gardens, and I'd like to welcome you to Gardening Trends in 2021. My favorite trend in gardening right now is habitat gardens. I love to invite all sorts of birds and butterflies and bees and pollinators, everything you can imagine into the garden. But habitat gardens begin up at the top with trees because you want to have nesting areas, you want to have shelter, you want to have nest building supplies for birds, and then you're going to work your way down into shrubs, which gives a lot of shelter and protection for a lot of animals. And then, of course, you're going to go into your beautiful lower plants that are usually flowering throughout the year. The important thing with a habitat garden is to maybe not have it be entirely made out of natives, but add as many natives as you can into your garden, because that's going to provide the best shelter and food and protection for all of the animals. One of the great things about having a habitat garden is that there's less maintenance in terms of you don't need to rake. You want to let those leaves fall and stay there to provide perfect ground cover and shelter for a lot of animals. So another good trend is container gardening, and that is a huge kind of area to discuss between having wall planters like this. These are our woolly pockets, and you can have these indoors or outdoors, but the fun thing about doing this is that the sky's the limit. Whatever you want to grow in there can pretty much grow in there. As the plant grows, that might be a limit in terms of if you put a tree in there, at some point you're going to want to pull it out, but we can put 1-gallon containers in here, which is really nice for that instant gratification look. This is a pollinator garden right now, so we've got hummingbirds and butterflies and bees all just buzzing around this at all times. But you know, sometimes we switch it out and we'll have grasses in here and hanging down plants, tropical things. You can have any kind of look that you would like. It's a great way to show your personality through a garden. Indoors or out, you can have container gardens that have herbs. This is my favorite way right now to show your herbs inside. You can buy your little 4-inch pots and put them in a container like this. This way you can take each one out to water it separately, because some herbs like basil and chives need a little bit more water than rosemary or thyme. And at the bottom of this container is a plastic saucer that will catch all the water, so you don't have to worry about it leaking onto the counter or maybe rusting this container. So container gardening indoors doesn't need to be just herbs. A lot of people love their indoor plants and have a hard time figuring out a way to water them without getting water everywhere on their furniture. So again, you could utilize a container like this, put that plastic saucer inside, and you can always pull your plants out, water them, and put them back, instead of just using one pot for each plant. I love this idea. Another really big trend with container gardening is raised bed planters. You can have a raised bed planter out of wood, out of metal, or out of plastic. You can have them on the ground, or you can have them up on legs. I personally love them raised high up because it's so much easier to get to them, and I feel like you're really a little bit more attentive to your garden. But the ones that sit on the ground are so great, except for if you're on a patio or a balcony. You cannot set those on the ground and have the soil right there because of drainage. Just remember, with a raised bed planter, drainage is always key. So if you're on a patio or a balcony where you cannot have water running off, you might want to rethink that and add some sort of pan underneath to catch the water. But those raised bed, the galvanized steel ones, are super fun to use for vegetables and things like that. Another big trend in gardening is massing. So massing is using one plant to cover a wide area. You can also use a couple of different plants, but all the same kind. For example, grasses. You can use smaller, mid-size, and large grasses all together just to give that huge feel of movement and lightness. You can use sunbelievable sunflowers to create a beautiful look of summer. You can also use succulents, large agaves, just mass planted to give a super big impact and a contemporary look. A great way to add to your massed planting is to utilize the right ground cover. So for example, if you have grasses, you might want to use mulch. If you have succulents, you might want to use decomposed granite or DG. And if you're creating a look with boxwoods everywhere, you could use a crushed granite to create kind of a French or an English look. Other plants that you could use for mass planting are of course the perennial lavender. How beautiful is that? Don't forget there are new lavenders that only get about 12 inches tall up to the big ones. The big French and English, they get at least 3 feet tall. You can do perennial geraniums like Roseanne for a nice low blue kind of a watery look, and you can use herbs, thyme, rosemary, sages, things like that. Mass planting is beautiful because when they flower, it's just amazing. Another popular container trend is succulents. Succulents are a classic, but the new trend is going up. If you have a smaller area that you want to utilize well and add a lot of color and texture with, succulents in a vertical planting is great. So thank you for joining me for our latest trends in gardening. Don't forget to go to rogersgardens.com for all your shopping needs. We have a Facebook page, we have an Instagram page, and we have a YouTube channel that you can subscribe to not miss any of our videos.